Hey everyone, and welcome to our session for today. In the last session, we had gone through a couple of programs. There is one particular program which was called sorting to arrays. So we're going to continue with that program over here in our session, and we're going to start with the main concept. That is, our first program was on how to sort two sorted arrays. Just to point out before we continue ahead, just remember, welcome everyone to our live session over here tonight on YouTube. This is our live session on 6th of July, 9:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. that we have. So in this session, we're going to continue from our previous premiere session that we had on how to sort two already sorted arrays. So the question comes up something like this. You have two arrays which are already sorted. Let's take the first array as something like this. Let's say we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now let's take another array. Let's consider this as something like 4, 5, 8, and 9. Now these two are sorted arrays. Now how are we going to make sure that these two sorted arrays can be combined together to sort? Now in this case, you can easily say, you know what, this first, this second, let's just combine as it is. We can easily quickly sort it, but that's not always the case. What if the first array was like this: 1, 3, 5, and 7. The second array is 2, 4, 6, and 8. This was the problem we looked at. Now how are we going to figure this out? How are we going to solve this? How are we going to let's say sort this? The idea is we need to figure out some way to sort both of these arrays. So one thing I just want to point out before we start with this, to all the students who have joined in as well, if you have any queries, any questions, any doubts within the program that we are going through, feel free to ask. I will ensure to clear those doubts. I will ensure to answer those questions, if any. You don't have to worry about it. You can feel free to ask whatever question you may have on the exact topic that we are going through. So you can feel free to do that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this next part. So we have already worked through this particular program in C++ in our previous session. So we're going to try to convert the same code which we have already done to Java and Python. Before we do that, under 2 or 3 minutes at maximum, I'm just going to quickly go through the logic of it so you can have a really good idea on how exactly we're going to do that. So let's take a quick look at this. Now, the idea is that, remember, this is your first array and this is your second array. In input, both of these arrays are going to be given for you. What you need to do is combine these two arrays and sort them. Now, there are multiple methods for us to do that. One method is, let's combine those two arrays as they are. Let's make 1, 3, 5, 7, 2, 4, 6, 8, and then let us try to sort it. Now, there's a couple of problems with this. So when we try to sort an array, what is the worst time complexity? I'm not talking about the worst time complexity in the worst case. What is the worst time complexity of the best sorting algorithm? Think about it. You guys can put it in the chat, live chat over here. The worst time complexity of the best algorithm, best sorting algorithm. Absolutely. When we talk about this, it's going to be in big of n log n. That's what we'll have. So I have one question before I go ahead. Will the code in C for this question will also be done? C and C++ are basically the same, so we just have done it in C++ in our premiere video. If you want to go back and watch this, please feel free to. The only major difference you can see in C and C++ is the fact that in C you're going to use printf statements. In C++ you're just going to use C in and C out. And the other difference is in C++ you're going to have additional functions which we need for interviews to do faster in programming. That's why we do that. So as some of you have answered, absolutely right, it's going to be big of n log n. Now big of n log n is a lot more time than we expect. It's not the least amount of time. We need to ensure that we can solve this code in a shorter way. We don't need to combine these two arrays and then sort them, because it's not big of log n. Remember, it is big of n log n. Big of log n is for binary search. N log n is for sorting techniques. This is for binary search. Please know the difference here. N log n is the best time complexity you can get for sorting. Log n is the best time complexity you can get for searching. So for those who just typed it as log n, please remember this difference. So in interviews, we should never go wrong about this. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next case here. Now, we know that these two arrays are already sorted. If they're already sorted, do I really need to worry about sorting them again? I really don't have to. If they're already sorted, I really don't have to worry about sorting the same arrays again. I really don't have to worry about thinking something like, you know what, I'm going to combine them. After combining them, I'm going to sort them. No point or no reason to do that. So we're going to use a slightly different technique. We're going to keep them as they are sorted, and we're going to try to somehow combine them in sorted form. So this is what we're going to do. We know our first array is sorted. We know our second array is also sorted. Since both arrays are sorted, can I say, let's assume this is our array n1, let's assume this is our array n2. Can I say the first element of both arrays will be the smallest element of both arrays? Because they're already sorted, right? I can say that. What do you guys think? Of course. Since I can say the first element of both arrays is the smallest element of both the arrays, can I only compare these? Let's assume this is at an index I. I'll just do one thing. I'll just make sure the font size is a bit more so that you guys can see. I'll just assume this is at an index, let's say I. Let's assume this is at an index, let's say j. We'll also take one more index called k for our third array. So what we are doing here is, when we compare first element of n1 and n2 arrays, this is our input arrays. Remember, in input you're going to get two values, m and n, where m is length of first array, n is length of second array. Then the user will enter two arrays. So based on the two arrays entered, we need to let's basically say merge them in certain way, combine them and sort them. So Rajat has pointed out that we can use merge sort. That's the best logic we can use this. This code, this question asked by TCS Digital, which could be asked, is a small modification of merge sort. It's not entire merge sort. If somebody by hearts, let's say, or mugs up merge sort algorithm, they won't be able to answer this question. This question is a small modification of merge sort, where you only have to implement a part of merge sort algorithm, not the entire recursive algorithm. So for those who don't know, don't worry, you can give it a check later on, because once you see this video, you'll get a good understanding of what it is. If you already know it, then you'll get a very good understanding on how to solve this. So we're going to take first elements of n1 and n2. Let's call this as index I and index j. So I'll take one small change here. I'll make this as 7 as well. Oh, sorry, 6 as well. Alright, so when we compare them, of course, this is lesser. Whatever is in index I is lesser. So I'm going to copy that over here. After copying it over here, I'm just going to increase the index. I'm just going to increase the index I, and I'm just going to increase the index k as well. That's it. Simple logic. Because we have copied this value over here, we can increase the index. Now again I have to compare, because remember, once this is already copied, this is now the smallest element of array n1, and this is now the smallest element of array n2. We're going to do the same comparison again, which is smaller out of these. So out of these, the value within n2 is smaller. So I have one question. Can we do it in big O of n plus m time and big O of 1 space? That's exactly what we are going to do. That's our exact logic. That's what we're going to do. In our scenario, if m is the size of array n1 and n is the size of array n2, we're going to do it in big O of m plus n with basically not even 1. We don't need any extra space except for these two variables. These two variables are the only things we basically need extra space. So you can somehow consider that as big O of 1. It's a constant, very basic constant. So you can assume that. So time complexity will be this. That's what we're doing. Remember, we are not using sorting algorithm. We are going through both arrays traversing through them once. That's all we're gonna do. If I'm traversing through this array once, how many elements am I traversing? M elements. If I'm traversing through this array once, I'm traversing through n elements. So what is n plus n elements? That's all we're gonna traverse through. That's gonna be our time complexity. Now let's take a look at this scenario. Which is lesser? Is it 2 or 3? Of course 2. So let's copy this 2 over here to our array. Let's increase the index for our third array and increase the index for second array as well. Once this is done, that means 2 is also copied. Now we're gonna compare the next elements. The next elements are 3 and 4. Which is smaller? Of course 3 is smaller. So let's copy this, and once this is copied, and we're gonna move the index. So I have one question, please explain complexities with examples. So we're gonna do that on a question by question basis. We'll not go through only time complexities in our digital interview, because the main concern for us in digital interviews is that we should be able to answer the programs, the coding questions. So any question that I will have here, for each question that we're going to solve, or for each problem that we are going to solve, I will ensure to explain with the time complexity for these problems. Don't worry, right? So let's take a look at this scenario. Now let's compare. We have 5 and 4. Of course 4 is lesser, so let's copy 4 and increase the index. We're going to copy 4 and we're going to increase the index. Done. Let's quickly do this. Sorry, not 5. Now again, let's compare I and j. Again, I is lesser, whatever is in index I is lesser. Let's copy that and increase this particular index as well. Now again, let's compare these. Now in this case, both are same. Now here comes the confusion. When both are same, what are we gonna do? When both are exactly same, what are the steps we're gonna do? When both I and j are same, you can copy any one of them. It really doesn't matter. The condition is if n1 of I is lesser than n2 of j. Let's say this scenario, if n1 of I is lesser than n2 of j, then I need to copy n1 of I here, and I need to increase this I index as well as k index. On the other hand, if I write else means it could be equal or greater. So whether equal or greater, I'm copying n2 of j. It doesn't really matter to us which one we copy. We can take any one of them. So let's assume I'm going to take, in our case, I itself. Let's say I have written code like n1 of I less than equal to n2 of j. That means when n1 of I is less than or equal to n2 of j, I'm copying from here. In that scenario, let's copy 6 over here, and let's increase the k value, let's increase the I value as well. Before going ahead, I have a question. Are these sorting and searching algorithms covered in our regular sessions? Absolutely yes. We are covering the 5 to 6 most commonly asked questions in terms of sorting algorithms and all searching algorithms with trees as well. So we're going to be doing those. So let's take a look at this very quickly. Now n1 array is completed. How do I know n1 array is completed? When I reaches m. What is m? M is 4, because there are 4 elements. What are the indices we have here? I have indices as 0, 1, 2 and 3. Since I increased from 3 over to 4, I can say we have completed one of the array. So how will we know if I've completed an array? If I is equal to m or if j is equal to n. Now when one of the arrays is completely copied, that means this array is having smaller values than the other array. We have completely put them in sorted array. Now can I say, since there's only one array left, I can copy the elements of the other array directly? Can I say this? What do you guys think? I have one question from Amish that, sir, aren't we using big of n plus m as extra space? Yes, we are. We are using one more array. I'll let you know how to not use this array when we implement it. So one step at a time, we'll do that as well. So since one array is already copied and the other array is also sorted, can I copy the other array as it is entirely? Yeah, I can. So I'm going to copy the other array as it is. I'm going to copy 6 and 8 as well. So k increases, j also increases. This array is also done. That's our final result, and this is what we print. Now to print this, and I need to go through a for loop, right? How many elements are there? M plus n. That means I'm going through one more m plus n, right? Here I'm going through m plus n because we are traversing through ones. So to sort them, I go through big of m plus n. After that, to print also, I'm going through big of m plus n. Doesn't it take big of 2 into m plus n? Of course. To avoid this, here's what I'm going to do. See guys, when we are printing it, when we are copying it to our third array, we are copying it in the same order, right? Instead of copying to third array and printing it, every time I find a lesser value, instead of copying to this array, what if I print it directly? Can I do that? At Peter Quill's question, we'll be doing that. Not to worry. We'll be going from scratch. In our live sessions, we also have videos in our portal where we have gone through lots and lots of time complexities from ranging from big of a constant value to big of 2 power n, all sort of problems, how to find it out if a code is given. We've solved all of those. So you can even go through those as well. Now back to this question. Instead of storing them in an array like this, can I directly print them? Because I'm storing in this order, right? When I print them, they will also be printed in the same order. Can I do that? That will ensure that I'm not storing separately. If I'm not storing separately, it will also ensure that I'm not taking separate time to go through our array and printing it. What do you guys think? Is that possible? Absolutely. We can do that because we're printing in the same order. We're storing in the same order. Instead of storing, let's just print it in the same order. Sounds like a simple logic. So let's do that here. So we have already gone through our C++ code. Let's quickly go through the next code here for us. That is through Java. Now, here's a simple thing. Again, since it is TCS Digital, it's your option to use whatever language you want. It's completely your option. You have the options to either choose C, C++, Java, or Python. But when it comes to C or C++, in our sessions, we'll only be going through C++ because let's face it, both are very, very similar. Now, let's go ahead very quickly over to this scenario. Now, let's try to work through this in Java. So I have one question: where can we get these codes? We will be sharing this in the chat window itself by the end of the session, so you'll be able to access them. Not to worry about that. Now, let us go ahead over here and go for the Java code. Now, here's the thing. In TCS Digital, let's assume they have given a window. I'm just pointing out. Let's assume they have given a window where on top of the window, just like this file name that it says something like file name like digital.java or something like that. If it does say some file name like this, you have to ensure that your class, which consists of main function, should have the same name as your file name. Please make sure there's no difference. In case they don't write the first part, in case they don't give you the skeleton of the code, make sure that you do this. If they do give the skeleton of the code, it really doesn't make much of a difference because we're basically gonna use the same thing. So in our case, my file name is code.java. So let me create a public class named code. Within this, we're going to create our main function, that is public static void main, where we're going to read our command line arguments. Done. This is our entire code. Now, first thing is, remember, in this program, what are going to be the inputs? We're going to figure out, we're going to need to read the inputs, right? So first input will be m. First input will be a number, that is m. Then an input will be n. Then you will have to read an array of m elements. Then you have to read an array of n elements after that. So we have to read all 4 of this. So let's take a look at this and see how exactly we're gonna let's say read these values, or how exactly we're gonna read all of these values one at a time or something like that. Let's try to figure this out. Now here's what we're gonna do. Let's read the elements in the same order, and please don't write anything except for the output that is asked. If the output is asked in such a way that you have to write like 1, 2, 3, 4 separated by space, please separate only by a space. Don't use slash n. If they particularly ask separated by tab space, please separate only by tab space. Don't use just a space. If they specify each number will be printed, should be printed in next line, please do the same. Do not use slash t or a space or anything like that. Because some compilers are so rigid and built in such a way that even if you make a simple change, even if you make a single error like this, it won't consider that as the right output. So we shouldn't do these mistakes because we know there's no point in doing that. So let's take a look at this. We're going to need two elements, m and n. And I'm also going to use I for our iterator to read the values in a for loop. So here's what I'm going to do. We're going to need to read m first. So again, to read inputs from the user, I need to use scanner. For me to use scanner, I need to import java.util.scanner. So let's do that and go ahead here to create an object of scanner. And in this object of scanner, since we are reading from input console, we're going to use system.in over here. Done. Now, once this is done, we're going to read our two values, that is m and n. M equals, let's say, scanner.next int. These are the functions that are available in scanner. So if you want to read integer, we use next int. If you want to read a string, we use next line. If you want to read a float value, you can use next float, and so on. You can change these as per the requirement. So once we read m value, let's also read n equals scanner.next int as well. Now once this is done, we need to create two arrays. Now what we are going to do here is not something like int array of or int n1 is equal to new int of 100 or something like that. We're not going to do something like this because Java supports dynamic memory allocation with arrays like this. So for us to create n1 and n2, I'm just going to use int n1 array is equal to new int of n elements. We can directly do this. In let's say older versions of C, we can't do this. So there's a lot of other advantages that we can have when we use these differently. I have one question: can't we just read inside void main? That's what you're doing. We're reading the values inside our main function. We're reading the values inside main function itself. At Shashi's question, if you're kind of confused like why we are not writing main outside a class, then the idea is that in Java, everything is in class. Even main function must reside within a class. And that class name must coincide with the file name. There are so many rules in the latest Java versions that we have, which we basically need to follow. So let's create our second array as well, equals new int of, let's say, n elements. Now that we have created two arrays, we need to populate them. We need to read values from the user that user are entering and store them. So I'm going to use a for loop for I equals 0, I less than m, I plus plus, just basic stuff. We're going to just read n1 of I equals scanner dot next int. Whatever is the next integer value we read, we're going to store it in n1 of I. Once we store the first array, then we'll read the next array. The second array is of length m. So we can do that. I have one question. How about array list? You can use array list also. There's no problem with it. You can either use array within it or array list. But remember, array list in Java has different features than array. So just know this very, very clearly. Your regular array is just your simple array as it is. Your array list is dynamic. What I mean by saying dynamic is it's going to increase the size and decrease the size however you want, and you need to use get and set methods. If you want to read values, you need to use get methods. If you want to store values, you need to set methods. So there's all these little modifications which we need to do. So I don't want to go through all those modifications. So I think we had a slight issue with some connections. My OBS connection just died, unfortunately. I'm assuming there was some glitch over in the middle. So So very sorry for that. So I'm assuming there was some slight glitch as of the last 4 or 5 minutes. So if any one of you is watching this video later on, you can just give this a check over. So I have one question from you. I have a couple of questions. Let me quickly answer them. I have one question that I've received. That is, what exactly is this program on? Very simple. You've got this program where you have two sorted arrays and you have to combine them and sort them. Now, I have one question I've received. What's the point in sorting them if they're already sorted? Remember, what if first array is sorted and second array is sorted, but when you combine them, they can't be sorted? Because here you have 1, 3, 5, 6, and here when you combine them, they won't be sorted, right? So, in that sense, you can't use just combination. So, we have to perform merge sorts sub function over here in our program. That's what we mainly need to do, and that's what we're gonna do. So far what we have done is just read both our input arrays as n1 and n2. So the moment we have read our two arrays, we need to go through each element of each array. From start to the end, we need to go through elements of each array. For that, we need two variables, I to indicate the index of n1 and j to indicate the index of n2. So let's create another variable which we haven't done here as j. So I indicates the index of array n1 and j indicates the index of array n2. So now I is initially going to be 0, j is initially going to be 0 as well. So when we use this, now it's an easy question, but the condition is you have to do this within big of m plus n, not even big of 2n plus 2n. It's big of n plus n. So given that it's a 60-minute time limit, the way you can expect questions are there will be one easy level question, one medium level question. You possibly need to answer both to ensure that you have the best chances of let's say clearing the round. So we're just going to go through the condition where I less than m and j less than n. This means that both arrays are not traversed yet. That's the main meaning of this. So when both arrays are not traversed yet, so we're going to have to go through one array at a time. We're going to have to go through each array. So what I'm going to do here is if n1 of I is less than n2 of j. So n1 of I, let's say I is initially index 0 and something like this. Let's say this is what we have. Let me quickly run this back. Alright, so I and j are initially 0 if n1 of I is less than n2 of j. What we did in it earlier was copy it. We copied it earlier. n1 of I, we copied it over to our third array. Instead of copying it over to third array, we're just going to print it. We're just going to print I have a couple of questions before I go ahead. Before I print this, how can we read array elements by new line? It's the same thing. When you use next int, whether you use space or enter key, it really doesn't matter. Both do the exact same thing. So in case any one of your questions are not answered within the same minute, do not worry because since the video is being live feed, there's going to be a little bit of delay of probably a few seconds. I hope you guys can bear with that. So I have one more question. This is this is the same question which we did in our Premiere program, Premiere video, but we're solving it using Java and Python as well. So once we solve it in Java, we're quickly going to go through and solve it in Python and go ahead for the next program. So we're just going to print the value that is n1 of I. Now, after printing the value, it's your decision based on the way they ask in the program. Are you supposed to use new line after that? If you're supposed to use new line, use println. If you're not, just use plus and /t or a space, whatever they ask. So it's completely as per requested. I'm just going to use a space here. Now, after this is done, we're going to have to increase I. Remember, this 1 is copied. Since 1 is copied, I'm going to have to increase I. In our case, instead of copying, we're directly printing it. That's the only difference. So I'm going to increase I. Instead of increasing I later on, I can just do post increment here. It doesn't make much of a difference. Both things are same. So I'll also give the condition if n1 of I less than equal to n2 of j, we do this. Else, what do we need to print? So now I'm going to give you guys a little question. Let's see if we can easily work through this. A very simple and easy question. If n1 of I is less than equal to n2 of j, I'm going to print n1 of I and increase I. Otherwise, in this case, n2 of j is lesser than n1 of I. So what do I do? What do I print? I'm going to print n2 of j here, whatever this value is. And after printing it, we're just going to increase the value of j on the other hand. That's it. So let's do the same thing. We're going to increase n2 of j, and we'll do post increment. Post increment will ensure that this value j is increased after printing n2 of j. I have one question. Is the size of both arrays same? Absolutely not. This is where a couple of test cases come in. What if size of array n2 is larger? What if it is larger than n1? What if it has more elements than n1? So in that case, when one of the array is completely done, we need to go through the other array entirely. So that's the logic we need to do ahead. See guys, this is when both arrays are not traversed yet. Now assume if one of the arrays is traversed. In our program, here we get to print, let's say 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me just write till here. So I will go all the way here, which means this array is entirely traversed. This array is traversed completely. But here you have only traversed till 4, you have to start from here. Since one of the array is already traversed, you only need to traverse the other array. What you're going to have to do is only print the rest of the elements in the other array. That's it. I have one question from Ananya Beras asking what is the difference between n plus plus and plus plus n. See, when you're printing n plus plus, it's going to print n first and then increase the value of n. If you're doing plus plus n, it's going to increase the value of n first and then print the value. So if I have n equals 5 and if I print this, it's going to print n, but after print statement, n becomes 6. If I do this, on the other hand, if I'm printing this, it's going to increase n to 6 and then print the value that is 6. That's exactly what's going to happen in these scenarios. Now, with this very, very clear, let's go ahead to the next case. Let's go ahead to the next part here and see how exactly are we going to solve this. Now, once this is done, once both arrays are traversed, there's a chance that one of the arrays is completely traversed, because remember this condition. The condition is while I less than m and j less than n, both must be true. What if I less than m is no longer true? What if our first array is completely traversed? In our case, our first array is completely traversed because I is equal to 4. I is equal to number of elements of the array. Since our first array is already traversed, that means I only need to go through second array. There could be other scenario where second array is traversed and I need to go through only first array. So after this while loop, I need to use separate conditions for both. That is while I less than m as one condition, that is if first array elements are left out. And I need to also use a condition that is while j less than n, that is if second array elements are left out. We need to do both of these scenarios. So let's do this. So I have one question. If both elements are same, we could have third if condition to print both an increment. That way one traversal will be reduced. At Sharon's question, I get the idea. If both elements are equal, we could print both. But remember, when both elements are not equal, aren't we doing extra condition every time? So we have to think in both ways. Like in this case, if it's less than or equal, immaterial, we are copying one and going ahead. If both elements are not equal, then it goes to, according to your condition, we will have one more statement to run through. So in that case, we could have a little extra data to work through. So we are just avoiding that. So I hope that clears it. So now, if first array element is left, I'm going to copy whatever is the statement here because I'm only copying from first array. If second array element is left, I'm only performing for second array. That's it. This is the entire idea. We don't even need to store in a third array. We don't even need to do that. We just need to start merging them instead of storing in a third array, which takes extra m plus n space. And for me to print that third array, I need to use one more extra for loop. All are skipped by just writing this. This is our entire program. So let's try running this and see if it actually works. Let's compile this. So the moment I compile this, let's see, done. Let's try running this. The moment I run this, I'll say m equals 5, m equals 6. So 5 and 6 elements. So for m, I'll just give 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. For n, I'll give 2, 3, 4, 6, 10, and 12. So it's supposed to put them in order and print them. Now, there's one little problem. I've used ln here. So it's supposed to be not ln anywhere. Everywhere it's supposed to be only space. So we need to update that because that doesn't count to be the right logic, right? So according to our compiler logic, if it could change. So let's take this up. Now, here's the thing we're going to do. So in this Java code, let's compile this. Let's again give 5 and 6. I'll just give 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Let's give 2, 4, 4, 5, 10, and 15. So we've got the sorted array within the time complexity of big O of m plus n. So this is our Java code that we've done. So I'll just copy it here for our reference. So this is just to point out Java code for sorting two sorted arrays as input. So in this, you can also get different questions. It's not like you're going to get the same questions in any way. So always the interviewers will go through different questions. Always the interviewers will go through different programs. They could even ask in such a way that they're going to enter 3 sorted arrays and they want you to sort these 3 arrays. So how are you going to do that? So you're going to take first 2 arrays, sort them. After taking first 2 arrays and sorting them, you're going to take the new sorted array and sort it with the third array. So these are some modifications that you can try out by yourself, which can help yourself out really well as well. Now let's go through the Python code. Now you may be wondering and asking, why am I not doing a function based code here? So in interviews, if they're asking in such a way that you have to write the entire code and you're performing this only once. The reason we go for functions is because we may need to do things again and again, or the program is too lengthy and you may want to create different functions. In this case, the program is neither lengthy and nor are we repeating these steps again and again. So we don't have to create extra overhead just by calling functions. We don't want to do that. That's why we are doing it here exactly. Now, on the other hand, if in interview they're asking in such a way that they are giving you separate function, like static int array, you're gonna have to return an integer array and work through, or return an array list and work through, then you have to do something like that. But let's focus on the logic entirely. We'll do more and more programs over time so we can get better at this. Now let's try to work through the same in Python. Pretty simple in Python. You're just gonna have to read 2 variables. Now I'm going to go through this very quickly because we've just completed the code in Java. It's not going to be too difficult for us to write the same code in another language. So let's quickly try to do this. Let's take m is int of input, because remember, by default every input is a string in Python. So let's also read n. Once it is done, we need to read 2 arrays. For us to read 2 arrays, we don't have the concept of arrays in Python. We need to read them into lists. So I'm going to need to create 2 empty lists called n1 and n2. So once I've created these empty lists, I have to enter these values in the empty list. So I'll just use for I in range of 0 to m for the first element, first array. So I'll just use n1 dot append of. I have one question. What if array has an element repeated? Same thing. If array has a repeated element, since it is sorted, they will be in the same order. Since arrays are already sorted according to the question, they will be in the same order. Since they'll be in the same order, you don't have to worry. You can use the same logic. You don't have to change the logic whatsoever. So let's go for the Python code. So for each element, all that we're going to do is append the integer input over here. So we're going to do the same thing for I in range of 0, n up to n different values. That is, when we use 0, n, that is, it starts from 0 until it reaches n minus 1. N is the stopping condition. When it reaches n, this for loop doesn't execute. That means it is same as saying for I equals 0, I less than n, I plus plus. It's same as saying this. So in this for loop, we're just going to use n1 dot append again of int of input. Same thing again. Now, let us go ahead from here. Let's try to, sorry, this is n2, not n1, because now we are entering for n2 array. So once this is done, we're going to have to go through the same logic as we did before. That is, we're going to have to use these same conditions. So I'm going to do the same thing here. We're going to set two values, I equals 0 and j equals 0. And we're going to give a condition while I less than m and j less than n. Remember, in Python, you don't have the concept of logical operators using double and double or. It's written in letters. I have one question. Yes, you can also use vector. That can also be done. In C++ code of ours in the previous video, we have used vectors itself. You can even do that. Vectors are just dynamic arrays whose size changes. So let's take a look at this. Let's see what we need to do over here. In this case, while I is less than m and j is less than n, we're going to do the same logic. We're going to copy the same thing. We don't even have to worry about this. We're going to copy the same thing here. We're going to check if n1 of I is less than equal to n2 of j. Since they are lists, we can use indices. That is possible. I have one question. Is it good practice to use try catch block even during these coding rounds? It's not necessary, because in interviews they will give you the condition beforehand. They will give you all input conditions beforehand, like there will be minimum of one element entered, there will be maximum of 1000 elements entered. They will give all these conditions. If they give a special condition like n can be ranging from, let's say for example, if they give special conditions like second array, length of array n, length of array n can be 0 up to some 1000 values. If it can be 0 as well, then you need to use some other techniques. Otherwise, you don't have to worry. And they will also specify that all elements entered will be from 1 to 1000 or something like that. In other scenarios, like if it cannot be converted to input, if they enter something like a space, not a space, if they enter something like question mark or something like that, then you have to worry about this. So at Saurabh's question, use this directly in YouTube itself. So you can directly access it here, not to worry at all. So now let's move ahead with this code. Where is it exactly? Here it is. Now, if n1 of I less than n2 of j, we need to perform n1 of I, print n1 of I and increase it. Now, as one of you pointed out, absolutely right, we don't have the condition here in Python called pre-increment and post-increment. We don't have that at all. Since we don't have it, we have to individually print n1 of I. And after printing n1 of I, you have to increase I by yourself. So I have one question, and to double and no, this is Python. In Python, logical AND is done by AND in words. It's not like C++ or Java where we use double ampersand for logical AND. In Python, logical AND is done by using the word AND. Like logical OR is done by using the word OR, and logical NOT is done by using the word NOT. That's one difference we have in Python. So let's do the same thing in else. In else, we're going to print n2 of j. After printing n2 of j, very simple logic, we're just going to do j plus equals 1. Now, after this entire conditions are done, we still have two conditions, that is I could be less than equal to m, sorry. And one more condition is while j could be less than n as well. We have these two conditions. So for these two conditions, we're going to copy this code which we already have written, paste it here without even worrying, and that should solve it. Now, let's try to execute this. Let's see if it works. Now, I have one of you asking a particular set of inputs. I'm going to use the same input as per your request, no worries. So let's run this. I'll use Python 3 and I'll just use code.py. So of course I've made one mistake, else is supposed to have colon. Let's update that. So let's compile and run, or in other words interpret and run now. So the first thing I need to enter is M. Let's enter M. So according to one of your questions, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5. So 6 elements for first array, 3 elements for second array. First array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5. Second array is 6, 7, and 8. So you get these values as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8. But there's one problem. Is it supposed to go to a new line automatically? If the interviewer asks it, the question is in such a way that it's not supposed to go to new line. Instead, it's supposed to just print a space. Then we need to modify our print statement. In our print statement, you have a special case called end. For those who don't know all of these, one of the best things that I would always expect or would always suggest everyone to do is go through, let's say, this particular logic. Let's go through this particular websites where you can get official documentations. You can just go for Python docs print. That's it. Just search for Python docs print. Go for Python 3, not Python 2, and you should be able to find the print function where you will be able to find how exactly end works, how exactly end works, how exactly separate works. There's so many options that you have, like end and separate and all of these things. So one of the best things that I would always suggest for everyone is to go through official documentation. I'm unable to find the official documentation links here, unfortunately. So I'm just gonna go through docs.python.org, and I'll just show you here print statement. Let's see, I hopefully get it. If not, I'll just do it as it is without worrying. So there's another thing called pretty print, which just prints in a really nice way. We're not going to work on that. So let's go for print statement. So converts, let's go for a actual print statement. All right, here it is, our actual print statement. As you can see, this is how it is. So by default, you're going to give some objects, however many objects you want to print. Separator is by default space, and end is by default new line character. That means for every print statement you write, by default, it's going to end with a new line character. If you want to change it, you need to change slash into something else. So we need to change that to a space. So let's just update that to a space. Let's update it in every print statement. And now let's try running this. Let's go 4 and 4. I'll just do 1, 3, 5, and 7. Sorry, guys. Let's go 4 and sorry, guys. Let's try. Let's compile this 4 and 4. Let's go through 1, 3, 5, and 7. And let's go to 2, 4, 6, and 8. We get the exact output as expected over here. So this is the basic idea. So followed by this, now since we have done this particular code, let's go on and work through the next case. Now there's one more thing. There's one little problem when we work through Python programs, because when user enters with a space, like for example, take this scenario. I'll execute the same program. If user enters m and n, and let's assume first array elements are entered as 1, 3, 5, and 7. Since we have a space, it can't be converted to integer. It gives you an error stating that you can't convert something like this to an integer, something like this to a base 10, because there's a space. You literally cannot convert it, because according to int, it reads until new line character. But here, this is space separated. So one of the best ways to solve this, one of the easiest ways to solve this, is read the input as a string itself. After reading the input as a string, split it based on spaces. That's an idea. So you can read the input completely as a string. After reading this input as a string, you can go through each character and convert it to space. So what I'm going to do here is we can do this using list comprehension, which literally takes one line. But for us to understand, I'm just going to explain this in a little detail for now. Let's say I'm just going to do something like, let's say str equals input. We have read it as an input. After reading it as an input, we have to split it. We have to perform this split, that is str.split based on spaces. Now by default it will always split based on spaces. When you split it based on spaces and store it somewhere, let's call list str. This is gonna be a list which is only having strings. Now in this list, for each element I need to convert it to an integer. So for each element of this I need to check integer part of it. On the other hand, if you want to do this here, or you can also use list comprehension directly to do something like let's say n1 is equal to read something like input dot split. Again, in that case you don't need a loop. You literally don't need a loop because you are reading all the values in a single string. So as we've just seen, we can make that small change as well. So that is one thing I would want you guys to give this a try. Let's see if you guys can also try this out. That's a pretty simple and easy logic. I have one question before I go ahead. If they ask duplicate elements are not allowed in merged output, then what to do? Simple. Okay, this is a good question. Let's try to solve this. What if they ask that you shouldn't enter duplicate elements? So if you don't want to use repeat duplicate elements, you shouldn't print. Instead of print, you should use another list to store, and instead of list you can store them in, let's assume, a set. Now for the question that I've received, what to do if we are working with C++? Now I'm not sure if I have that entire code that we did in the last session. Let me just try to quickly go through this, because the last session we had done a C code. Let me just quickly try to take this. If I am able to get them, I'll immediately convert it to the condition that has been asked, so that you don't have to struggle much. Okay, not a problem. It's all right. We are unable to find that, but I'll give you guys a simple clue. In C++, you have a separate header file called set. In C++, you have set and unordered set in C++. Both are there. So when you want to use in C++, you can use either one of these. So there are differences between them. One is based on a tree, one is based on a hash, which we'll see in time. We'll see that in time. But for now, you have the option of set even in C++. This is one of the main reasons why I always suggest us to use C++ instead of C. Because when such questions, such scenarios are often asked, we can make these modifications. So let's make this simple modification over here. If I want to create a set, like as pointed out in the question, let's quickly do this. As pointed out in the question, if I have 4 and 4 elements, if my input is 1, 3, 3 and 3, 5 and 5, 5 and 5 or something like that. So let's see, what exactly did we do here? Okay, we just needed to change this because we modified this. So when we do this, let's say same scenario, let's take it as 1 and 1. Both elements have only one element, and I enter 1 and 1. Our output is supposed to be 1 and 1. But if you want it to be only once, if you want each element to be only printed once, the best way is, instead of printing them, store in a set. Then use an iterator to print the set entirely. That's what we can do. I have one more question. We can just use if else and increment both but print just any one. See, to that question, you can use if else both and print just one. You have to add separate scenarios. Let me just put this out very quickly. Consider this. If you have 1, 1 and 1, and again 1, 1 and 1, since you have if else scenario, when you have 1 and 1, you're only going to print one of them. You're only going to print one of them, increase I here and increase j here. Again, you have 1 and 1. You have to print any one of them, right, according to your logic. But previously you've already printed one, so you shouldn't print one again. So you have to check previous element also, and much more conditions will come up. So the time complexity will slightly, not by much, but slightly rise up. So that's something we want to avoid as much as possible. So you don't have to particularly use that logic. So you can use a set. Now, just to point out for those who are confused, if you want to use it in C++, there's something called set, there's something called unordered set. So which header file do you want to include and which one do you want to work through? There comes a confusion. Let me answer this very quickly. If you want to use set or unordered set, set is based on tree. Unordered set is based on hash. The one which is based on tree has access or search or access, whatever you want to call, search of big of n log, or not n log n, search of log n, because it's based on binary search trees. For hash, it is big of 1. Searching takes only one, let's say, operation at maximum for hash. Searching takes log n at maximum for tree. So whenever you're using set, if you want to perform search a lot, use hash. If you don't want to perform search much, you can go for simple tree, because this is easier for you to work through if you don't want to search a lot. We'll see these things in detail in the coming sessions as well, not to worry. So with this, we've gone through this particular program in all languages. So I'm just going to share this first to you guys so that you can access them. That is the Java and Python code that we have just done in our session here. So if you want to work through it, you can access it anytime later on as well. And followed by this, I'm going to give you guys one small assignment. Let's see how we're going to work through this. So I have one particular question, but what about if you want to implement it in Java? In Java also you have the concept of set. So in Java you have something called collections. Under collections you have something called set, which you can basically use. So you can even do that when it comes down to Java. So let me just paste this. This is digital. The program is sorted arrays. So that's our Java code, sorry, Python code. I think it's what I've copied first, right? Then I'm gonna just copy Java code for you guys. Right, it's okay. One of you has asked for C++ code. I think I'll have to rewrite it. I'll rewrite it and upload it within the comments, not to worry. All right, so I'm just gonna share this link with you guys to begin with for now, so that you can access this anytime you guys would like to do it. Let me just share it very quickly. So hold on guys. So let me just copy the right link for you guys so you can access it. I have one question by the time. Okay, any questions still here, you guys can feel free to ask, not to worry. I have one particular question. In Python, how to use hash? See, let me quickly copy this, because I think I'm in halfway copying this link. So immediately after done, I will ensure to go through your answer, because I have some issue with, let's say, copy paste over here. So I'm just trying to ensure that, yeah, perfect, done. Now the link is copied. You're going to be receiving the link very, very soon. Now I have one particular question, that is, how does hash and everything work in Python? See, Python, when you use set, like for example, when you want to use set, if you want to use hash set, or you want to use something like, let's say, I'll just give you this simple scenario. Let's say if you go through hash, so you have separate ways to do that. So again, I'm not going to go through in detail with this for now, but for now, just remember, I'm just going to give you a very simple and easy logic. So the basic idea is like this. So in Python, by default, every set is based on hash set. Just note this. In Python, by default, every set is based on hash set. So what happens is, each set is unordered in this sense. If you want to create tree set or something like that, you have different ways. Just like in Java, you have collections and work through it. In Python, you have different ways to do it as well. So the link for this video is already shared. That is the program codings, the codes that we have done. So before we go ahead, I have a couple of questions. So the C++ code, I'll update it, because I think I need to type it again. So I'll type it after the session, I'll update it and share it. I have one question. What happens when two arrays are equal, like 1, 1, 1 and 1, 1, 1? It performs the same process for all the elements. Even though all elements are equal, it's going to perform them. Now, a better way to solve this, if you want them to be non-repetitive, a better way to solve this is also store them in set. Not just like perform comparison and store them in set later on. You can even store them in set initially, which will ensure that no repeated values exist even there. So you can even compare by yourself what's going to be the time complexity in those scenarios and everything and think through. So with this, we'll end our program today with this particular scenario. And in tomorrow's session, what we're going to do, or in the next session that we're going to have, we're going to go through some string-based programs and have some fun with that. So I hope you guys had a fun time in this session, and we'll catch up in the next session after this. So keep preparing well, keep going through as many programs as possible, and good luck with your digital preparation, guys.